Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Greetings, friends in Christ. We wanted to let you know about some proposed changes in our Synod governance structure that we will be voting on at this year's Synod Assembly. These changes impact the positions that we will be electing this coming year and in the future. You will find the document outlining the related constitution and bylaw provisions on our Synod Assembly page of our Southwestern Texas Synod website. There are 4 major changes that we're going to discuss this afternoon recommended to our governance. First is term limits for Synod officers. Second is nominating committee composition and terms. Third is Synod Council composition and terms. And then the last is ministry teams. We last updated our governance structure in 2011, and the world and our Synod had changed a lot in those 10 years. So we wanted to consider a different structure that meets our current and hopefully future needs as well. We will go over each of these items in more detail now.
Thank you, Carl. We've not historically had any term limits for our Synod officers, which include the bishop, vice president, secretary, and treasurer. While continuity of leadership can be a good thing, it can also limit the opportunities for new leadership to arise. A number of other synods have term limits for their officers already. We are recommending a limit of no more than 3 consecutive terms for each of the officers, which would mean a maximum of 18 years that a leader could serve as bishop and a maximum of 12 years that other officers could serve.
The nominating committee has been made up of representatives from each of the 8 conferences, plus a youth or young adult. These have been 6-year terms, except for the youth young adult position, which have become increasingly difficult to fill, and often the members of the nominating committee have not known enough people in their conference to make recommendations. We are recommending the structure from the Synod Model Constitution, which allows a nominating committee of 5 people to be constituted in advance of each election. They receive direction from the Synod Council as to which positions need to be filled. The conference deans and the office of the bishop assist as needed in identifying names and pre-screening candidates for elected positions. Candidates may still be nominated from the floor for all elections.
Are there any questions so far about what we've gone over? The Southwestern Texas Synod is committed to creating and maintaining a Synod Council that authentically reflects the diversity of our communities, including race, ethnicity, geography, for example, rural, urban, suburban, border proximity and conference, gender, age, sexual orientation, education, and economic status. Historically, we've legislated that our Synod Council be diverse in terms of participation from each conference, while hoping for other kinds of diversity to come along. This has not, by and large, come to pass. If we're serious about our leadership reflecting the rich diversity of our territory of Central and South Texas, we need to consider how to build that into our governance structure. The proposed new governance structure allows flexibility to continue to have representative conference structure, as well as more diversity in other areas. It allows people from all over the Synod who have the desire and the gifts to serve in leadership to have more opportunities to serve. It also recognizes the unique perspective that deacons, ministers of word and service, bring. Now that they are considered rostered rather than lay members, we need to intentionally ensure that they have a voice at the table. In this new structure, there are 4 officers: bishop with 6-year term, vice president, secretary, and treasurer with 4-year terms, which are all mandated by the Constitution, 1 youth member with a 2-year term, and the following who will all have a 3-year renewable term. 5 to 7 rostered ministers, at least one of whom is a minister of word and sacrament, person of color whose primary language is other than English, and 9 to 13 lay persons, roughly split between men and women, including at least 1 male and 1 female person of color or whose primary language is other than English. In shortening the Synod Council members' terms to 3 years, but allowing them to be re-elected to a second term, this better matches the realities that as life changes are happening more frequently, it's easier to find people to serve for shorter terms. At the same time, for those gifted and passionate about serving, they could serve 1 additional term. In advance of each election of members of the Synod Council, the current Synod Council will examine its current composition and upcoming vacancies and instruct the Nominating Committee of the number of persons to be elected and the requirements for each position to be elected, consistent with the categories as described. Now that was kind of complicated. Are there any questions or comments so far before we continue? Right.
No questions? Okay, so we'll move forward. For this year's elections, the Synod Council took a look at what the representation we already have of people remaining on Synod Council and what categories these existing people fit in. Then we looked at what categories we still needed and gave guidance to the Nominating Committee. We had a number of Synod Council positions that we should have filled at our 2020 Synod Assembly, but didn't get the opportunity to because this assembly was canceled. Some leaders, like our Vice President, agreed to stay on 1 more year. Others stepped back and Synod Council appointed people to serve this year until the next assembly. We primarily appointed people who had already accepted nominations for Synod Council or other committees, like Pastor Katie Wegner. In 2021, those folks like Pastor Katie can choose to be nominated again and would continue on Synod Council for 3 more years if elected. The Synod Council positions to be elected at this assembly are presented on the screen. So, because you haven't had a chance to look at those real quick, I'll run over them real quick. The Vice President and Secretary, those are elected officers. Then youth, and we have lay young adult. Then we have several lay male and lay female positions. So we have a deacon for a 3-year term. We have rostered ministers at large, and then we also have rostered minister, person of color, or primary language other than English. So all of these are 3-year terms except for the youth and also the elected officers, which are 2- and 4-year terms respectively. In addition, in order to hopefully have each conference represented and to balance male, females on Synod Council, the council recommended the following: at least 1 lay or rostered member from the Hill Country Conference, a preference for 2 of the rostered ministers to be male. And a reminder here that deacon now falls under the rostered minister position. So in addition to having specifically 1 deacon on Synod Council, there is room for more than 1. Eventually, we will have approximately 1/3 of the Synod Council turn over each year, rather than 1/2 every other year, which will be helpful from a continuity perspective. It will take a few years to get there because of our changes in being off cycle due to the canceled 2020 assembly, but we will get there. So are there any questions at this point about the positions that we're going to elect or what we did during this interim year?
James has his hand up.
Okay, James.
Carl, I thought, I read it earlier, but like somebody like Elva, who finished out my year, I mean, when I stepped down after my 4 years and she came on, Will she be entitled to 2 full terms?
She should be, yes.
They call that the Lyndon Johnson rule.
Only you would remember that, James.
Well, I was actually about not even in kindergarten yet, but that is traditionally the way it works. If somebody fills out an unexpired term and for a position that has 2 terms, like Elva, she could run twice and be elected to 2 full terms. Okay.
Yep.
I thought I saw that clearly stated in there, but then I reread it again today and I didn't really see that. But since that's the, I don't know what you'd call it, but that's kind of the understanding ever since Lyndon Johnson, that I don't think it has to be added into anything or specified.
Thank you. Other questions or comments?
I have a question. First of all, I can't, this is Alpha, I can't see my hand up thing. Can you go back to the people that are going to be nominated, or?
Sure.
I think that's the one. Yeah, I see the lay male person of color, and our female person of color is
Brenda Pinheiro.
Brenda, right? Okay. I was just wondering.
Correct.
No, good
Great
question. Yep.
Any other questions before we continue? Okay. So the final category of changes is in the ministry team area. There are currently 3 elected chairs of Synod ministry teams: the chair of the mission team, the leadership development team, and the ministry resource team. All 3 teams were established in 2011. As we've been living into the structure for the ministry teams, there have been a few things that have become apparent. One, it's helpful to have more flexibility in terms of the makeup, the meeting, the operations, and the reporting of these teams to reflect how we actually work currently. These proposed changes provide that flexibility. 2 of these teams, the renamed Holy Experiments team and the leadership teams, have had their descriptions rewritten jointly by the team chair and the corresponding Synod staff person to be more reflective of what these teams are actually doing. These 2 ministry team chairs will continue to serve on Synod Council with voice and no vote as before. The terms are recommended to be changed to 3-year terms, with an additional term being possible, consistent with changes to Synod Council terms. It is also recommended that the ministry resource team be restructured. Previously, the chair for this team simply gathered up reports from the working groups and oversaw a bit of seed money that was budgeted for these various working groups. At the time this team was originally created, there were a lot of working groups that were under this team. There's currently only 1 or 2 working groups, with one of them winding down their work. It was felt that there does not need to be an elected chair of such a team. Rather, we're recommending self-organizing ministry teams, which would take the place of the current working groups. They are recognized by Synod Council for as long as they have passion for their work, and then they disband. They are not allocated budgeted money, but are eligible to apply for the Synod Transformational Ministry grants to help fund their work.
So in closing, we hope that these changes will be helpful as we go into the future as a Synod. We will vote on these proposed changes at the beginning of our assembly. Assuming a positive vote, these changes pass, we will then move to elect persons to these positions. We hope that if you have questions or concerns about any of these positions, that you will bring them up with either the office of the bishop or the Synod Council well before our Synod assembly, so that our gathering can happen as efficiently as possible. And we look forward to seeing you all at assembly in June.